Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we've got a little bit of Blackhawks talk, but a whole lot of not necessarily good baseball talk from the north side and south side. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So, season is over now, but that shouldn't stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com, picking up a hat, shirt, jersey, and tickets for the upcoming season. So, head on over to icehogs.com, tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right, Alex. This started off as a promising week for the Chicago Cubs, but it didn't necessarily end up that way.
No, it was one of those things where once again we thought everything was fixed and everything was going to be all right, and then it just took a complete dive.
So let's talk. We got a little bit of Blackhawks, not much. Why don't we jump into that first, get that out of the way, so we can really sink our teeth into baseball?
Yeah,
Does that
sounds
sound fair?
good to me. Yeah.
So this week, a minor leaguer for the Blackhawks, Dylan Fournier, retired at age 22.
Yeah, I saw that. I didn't really read into it. I just saw a tweet, and I didn't really think much of it. But now that I think about it, I really scratched my head on that.
Yeah, I mean, I knew he had some injury issues, and I read a little bit more into it, and apparently he had shoulder injuries that he just couldn't recover from, and it was affecting his play, and just decided to hang it up at 22. It's always sad to see somebody have to retire because of injury rather than just their time had come and gone.
Absolutely, and no matter what sport it is, whether it's hockey, it's baseball, football, whatever, it really is tough to see that. And hopefully he could find his path in another related field or unrelated field, whatever. It's just, just a shame.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, and hopefully he's able to find success elsewhere in life. I guess that's most important thing.
For sure.
But the other bit of news is the Blackhawks, starved for young defenseman talent, was able to sign Jan Ruda, the defenseman out of the Czech Republic, this week for a 1-year deal with a salary cap hit under $1 million.
Yeah, I really liked that signing. I think he's 26. He's going to turn 27. Did the report on him, wrote about him a little bit. Pretty good scorer, moves well. So I really like the addition. It addresses a much-needed area on the Hawks. So good first move.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was a coveted guy. There was a lot of teams going for him, and so it was nice to see the Blackhawks be able to get him. He played for the Pirati Chomutov of the Czech Hockey League last season, and according to Stan Bowman, he was on the Blackhawks' radar for a number of years, and he's shown great promise during the time. His addition to the organization makes the defense more dynamic, and he has shown he can contribute offensively as well. And it's funny because he put as well, but that's really what Jan Ruda is. That's his game, is he's more of an offensive defenseman. And after seeing kind of how Nashville was able to establish a lot of their offense through their defense, it's no surprise that the Blackhawks are going to probably try to push a little bit more to that way as well.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And one thing that I was looking at that was interesting that I couldn't really find, maybe I didn't look hard enough, but do you have any idea what other teams were interested? Because like you said, it sounded like there were a number of teams in on him.
I couldn't find a list, but I did hear a few teams that were suggested. Detroit was one. The Islanders were one. I believe the Avalanche were one. Those are three teams that I heard, but I didn't see any sort of definitive list of teams that had put like maybe bids in on them or contract offers.
Yeah, because sometimes with that kind of thing, you hear, oh, this team, and this team are in on him, with the possibility as this team being an outsider. All we really heard was a number of teams are in on him, and the Blackhawks got him. And like you said, Stan Bowman saw this guy for a while now, and the fact that he's liked him for a while makes it more promising, I think.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. They're going to have two really young defensemen that are foreign next year with Kempny and Ruda that hopefully pan out a little bit.
And I believe Kempny and Ruda played together on the juniors team one year. I believe so. I thought I read that.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising. I mean, how many hockey leagues can there be in the Czech Republic?
Yeah, and I mean, clearly if they're both going to be playing in the NHL, they're the best of the best, so you would imagine that the juniors would have NHL caliber talent.
Yeah, and it sort of leads us into the last point I had about the Blackhawks, I don't know if you saw the report from Jay Zawadski last night.
I did, yes.
Which is very interesting. For those that haven't heard, he basically said that a core player will be dealt soon that is probably going to hurt them in the short term. It's not Jonathan Taves. And also, Marcus Kruger's days as a Blackhawk are almost 100% done.
Well, first of all, can we talk about the sheer lunacy of people actually wanting Taves to be part of that trade? I mean, first of all, I just want to get it out there. I think that's absolutely nuts. Second of all, it creates a lot of speculation of which core players would make sense to trade, and it kind of gets you thinking more and more and more until it actually happens.
If you want to hear a little bit of lunacy, I was looking and I saw several people suggest that it should be Patrick Kane that goes.
Yeah, I saw that too, and to your point, that is also a lot of lunacy. I mean, Taves and Kane are the two people on this team that are like 100% not being traded no matter what. Do you remember the rumors, I think it was like 2011, 2012, when they were talking about him being traded for like Ryan Miller or something? There was some weird rumor talk around and speculation and people wanting that to happen for some reason.
Oh yeah, I was there was another one with Kane being traded for a defenseman from Buffalo, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's really hard to trade a guy who over a number of years has been a point a game player. They don't come that often. And if you're going to trade Patrick Kane, then you better be getting something awesome back, like a Connor McDavid.
Yeah, exactly.
Like then you're like, okay, well, yeah, that seems like a reasonable trade because we're getting $10 million off the books and we're bringing in another stud.
Right. That's not happening.
That's not absolutely. Yeah, I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but if other than that, I don't see how you get equal value for trading Patrick Kane.
No, you really can't get it. You really can't.
Yeah, he's an exceptional player. He's a point a game player, and I just don't know what you can get in trade for him that's going to be anywhere close to equal value or in your favor.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, it does lead to a lot of speculation, and I mean, luckily, this is likely going to happen sooner rather than later because the I believe I read the Golden Showers will be making their selections on the 20th of June, so in a week and a half, and then they'll be announced on the 21st in a public fashion. So the Blackhawks have to have the players protected and the list public by the end of the business day on the 17th, so 1 week from today. And then on the 18th, 19th, and 20th is when Las Vegas makes their selections of who they want to draft, and then the 21st is when they're announced. So, and then the draft is on the 23rd to 24th. So you figure that any kind of movement is going to happen pretty quickly, like in the next 2 weeks. Right,
exactly. And with the expansion draft this year, it makes this offseason, honestly, all the more interesting. I mean, you have the Marcus Kruger stuff, and you have the other talks about Trevor Van Riemsdyk being available if they were to take Marcus Kruger. So it's really interesting that this whole Blackhawks, I guess I could call it revamp, after last year, after the playoffs, is happening during this expansion draft. I think there just adds a lot more interesting factors to it.
Yeah, I mean, and then the good thing about them trading Trevor Van Riemsdyk is it opens up a lot more playing time, some ice time for Michael Roosevelt. Nothing?
I can't. No, crickets, nothing. I got nothing. I say nothing.
I mean, I could see that being a thought in Quenneville's mind. Gotta get more playing time for him because he's steady. He's steady. I know what to expect of him. He's steady. Steadily
he can
bad.
Barely move anymore. Like that needs to just enough of that. I mean, look, I'll give Roosevelt credit. He had a good career, but how old is he now? And he's dealt with injuries. He just can't do it anymore.
He's old and he's slow, and he just you need more speed from your defensemen. That's really what was a problem with the Blackhawks last year. There's a lot of problems, but there was lack of speed with the blue liners, and if you're going to add another slow old defenseman, it's just compounding that problem.
Well, I mean, watch the playoffs this year. Look at who's prevailing and look how they're prevailing. Speed is part of the game, and you're not going to be able to counter that now with like a nearly 40-year-old Micah Roosevelt.
Oh, absolutely. Hopefully part of this, shake up and power struggle between Stan Bowman and Joe Quenneville, part of that is being forced on Quenneville that he's got to play young defensemen and let them cut their teeth, because he can't rely on Brian Campbell and Michael Roosevelt and these turd Fergusons of defensemen.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the list of defensemen that we had last year and who, are going into free agency. You got guys like Campbell and Oduya, and, you're probably not going to bring them back because they're past their prime and you're trying to get younger and faster, so it's not really going to do it. Again, good careers, but you don't last forever.
Absolutely not. And, even their top three defensemen in Seabrook and Keith and Hjalmarsson, you're seeing declines on their part.
Right, exactly. I mean, look at all the miles that those guys have since 2010. You look at the playoff runs, 2010, 2013, 2015. That's 16 wins, Stanley Cups, and well more than 16 games because they didn't sweep every series, not even close. In addition to all the other years they made the playoffs, for 2014 you made it to the Game 7 of the conference finals, and then the other years, yeah, you were out in the first round, but you look at how many times they've made it at least to the conference finals, 5 times since 2009. That's a lot of hockey, a lot of extra hockey being played.
Yeah, but the thing is it's miles on their body, but we can't be looking at the past and saying, well, that's what we had. Is we got to move forward. This team needs to bring out defensemen that can come and skate. Right now is you do have Michael Roosevelt under contract. This coming season is going to be the last one of this contract. But Campbell is a UFA. Oduya is a UFA. You can't expect Campbell's 38. Oduya's 35. You can't really bring them back, can you?
No, you shouldn't. I mean, wasn't Campbell even talking about retiring anyway?
Yeah. I think he was Blackhawks or retire.
Yeah.
You've got, so who do you have on contract? You've got Seabrook, who's got another 75 years left on this contract. He has, I don't even know how many more years he's got. It's a lot.
Because he signed that extension last year, right? Not this past season, but the season before.
I think it might have been then.
And it was a 6-year deal?
He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got at least 7 years left on this contract.
Oh, it was even bigger than I thought. I forgot how big it was.
It goes to at least the 23-24 season.
And do you really think he's going to be effective for most of those years at this rate?
Do you even think he's going to be effective for any more of those years?
Not as much, no. I mean, we've seen a decline the last 2 years or so. I mean, look at last year. He had so much trouble holding the puck in at the line. He wasn't catching up to guys like he used to. He's a very talented guy, but again, he's getting older. He's got a lot of miles on him, and he's just not putting up the stuff that he used to, and that's what happens with age. You got to remember, he's been around a while. Yeah.
So you've got Seabrook under contract, Keith under contract, Hjalmarsson under contract, Kempney's under contract, Gustav Forsling's under contract. For the time being, you've got Trevor Van Riemsdyk and Michael Roosevelt. Then I guess now you have Jan Ruda. It's a little bit scary, because you're imagining Van Riemsdyk is going to be gone if the rumors are true.
Right.
You can't count on Roosevelt.
No.
So you're looking at 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. You need a 7th defenseman in. And if one of those core players is Brent Seabrook, what are you going to have to do to sweeten that pot to get somebody to take that massive contract?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think, if Seabrook was to be traded, who would want him? Who would need him? And would it maybe be done for a team to help ticket sales? I don't know. It's just, with a lot of the times when there's a player available looking to trade, there's a number of teams that say, okay, they'd make sense here, here, and here, or this team and this team have expressed interest, whether it's through sources or just outright saying it. This isn't really the case now. I have no idea where he would end up if he were to be traded right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully Florida would be dumb enough to take him and take another one of our problems off our hands. I mean, when they took Campbell, that was a big sigh of relief.
That was huge, and that was right after the first cup, wasn't it? Or no. It was after 2011.
Yeah, so that was a huge relief for the Blackhawks, and if somebody could take Seabrook, that would be another one. I mean, I know Duncan Keith has a long time left on his contract.
I still think Keith has a little more left in the tank than Seabrook. I think Keith is still the number one guy on that team, personally.
Yeah,
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And plus, Seabrook is also making $1.3 million more a year.
Right.
So if you move that, it gives you almost $7 million of room to play with.
Right. Yeah. That's another good point.
So I don't have any more hockey talk, so I guess we can just hop right back into baseball. So this week was the Cubs had come off the sweep of the Cardinals, and they had 2 series, one against the Marlins and one against the Rockies. Started off good, took 2 or 3 from the Marlins, even though it wasn't the best play per se, but then the Rocky series happened.
Yeah, I was at game 1 of that series, sitting in the bleachers right under the video board. And since then, the Cubs offense went back down to being non-existent.
Yeah, it's been real. I mean, really bad against the Rockies, and the Rockies don't have good pitching. It's not like they're, they're facing Bob Gibson out there. They're facing guys with 4.5 ERAs.
Their pitching is very young, and I think it's more talented than it has been over the years. But still, the other day, it was yesterday, they had 9 walks and 3 runs. They had several opportunities, bases loaded, less than 2 outs, and they didn't score at all. Like that's just horrible execution. I mean, if you watch the 9th inning yesterday, bases loaded, 1 out. The guy's walking everybody, not even close. Zobrist swings at the first pitch and pops up, killing that rally.
Pretty much.
When these guys get 2 men on board, they forget how to hit and they forget how to execute.
And it's not just when they get 2 outs; it's when they get 2 strikes. Is how many guys on this team adjust their approach at the plate when there's 2 strikes?
Bryant and Rizzo.
Yeah,
That's
pretty much.
Bucket list.
That's pretty much what you got. I think Miggy does a little bit, but he's not a full-time player.
John Jay's good at it too, but he's a bench guy.
And he does veteran tricks. He's more so he'll lean into a pitch, things like that. He's more willing to bunt. But you look at Javi Baez, Addison Russell, Kyle Schwarber, Ian Happ, even Jason Hayward. They're not adjusting the swing. It looks like they're swinging away as if there's a 3-0 count as they are 0-2 count.
Yeah, absolutely. Baez never walks. Every 3-2 count, he swings 3-2, and you see pitchers, they don't throw anywhere close. They literally lob it in the other dugout, and he'll chase it.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. Is statistically right now, the Cubs lead the National League in walks, and they are dead last in the National League in batting average with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, I think it's 213.
It's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, I was actually going to share some more stats with you. I just worked on a Sabermetrics article about the Cubs offense. Here are a few things I want to list to you. I kind of want to get your thoughts and opinions on these. You ready?
Absolutely.
Their opposite field percentage versus their pull percentage is as dramatic of a ratio in baseball. They are the number 1 pull team, dead last in opposite field. How many times have we seen the Cubs try to pull something and just crush it and just completely miss? Because their contact rate is lower than the half percentile.
I mean, look at how many guys they have that they put like the nasty shift on. And when you listen to Joe Madden talk about it, he's like, well, Kyle hit the ball really hard, but they had the shift on. Well, you know what? There's a reason they have the shift on. It's because he can hit it as hard as he wants, and he's hitting straight at somebody that's in the shift.
Exactly, and this is a team with guys who are capable of going in all directions of the field. We saw Bryant do it a lot in his rookie year. We're seeing it doing it more this year, not as much last year. Rizzo is known for spraying all over. Kyle Schwarber in his rookie year, he went opposite a lot. Ben Zobrist is known for going to all fields. John Jay, Jason Hayward, when he's having a good season, can go to all fields. And just nobody's doing that right now.
No, you're absolutely right. It's nice to see the numbers to go with the eyeball test.
Right. There were a few more stats I kind of wanted to throw out there. Like you said, the walks, yeah, they're great. They're really great. The Cubs are one of the least hard-hitting contact teams in baseball, and they're one of the more soft-hitting contact teams. And they are the worst team, or one of the worst teams, in BABIP. And a lot of people say, well, there's a lot of BABIP luck involved, but you look at it, and I'm saying, well, if you're not hitting the ball hard, soft hit balls are more likely to be outs than hard hit balls.
That's totally true. I mean, when you hit a ball hard, good things happen. It may not be happen every time. You could unfortunately hit right at somebody, but
It'll even out eventually.
It evens out, but soft balls, they don't even out. They go in the favor of the defense.
Right, exactly, because if you're hitting weak grounders or weak pop flies, those are going to be put out most of the time. So they're not squaring the ball up like they have in the past. And early on in the season, it seemed like they were getting a lot of bad BABIP luck, but now you see a lot of ground balls, a lot of pop flies, lazy fly balls to the warning track. You see that a lot. And it's going to show that, the approach isn't always there, and there's just the execution that we expect from this team isn't there.
Yeah, it's not there at all, and it's at the point where we're in mid-June right now. I'm not saying the panic button, but is there a button between the everything's fine and panic that you can start pushing?
Absolutely. I tweeted that today. I said, look, there's a lot of baseball left, but it's not early. This is take action button. This means we're not panicking, we're not writing anything off, but something needs to change because right now it is not working.
I mean, the only good thing is that their division, and we say this every week, is just awful. Is there, every team just loses away right along with them. But, if they were in the AL East, if they were in the AL West,
the NL West,
the NL West, the NL East, pretty much any other division in baseball, they've got a steep hill to climb, and they're probably fighting for a wild card spot.
Yeah, Cubs would be in DEFCON 5 right now if they were in pretty much any other division but their own. But the one thing that is worrisome is if they do keep coasting like this is an if, I can't predict the future. You can't write off another one of the teams in this division in just getting hot. And yes, I am looking at you, St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis is just, they're plummeting.
They're plummeting right now, but knowing them, they'll find a way. They'll find a way. I just know they will.
Yeah, I mean, so here, if you're looking at stats, the Cubs with their current record, if they were in the NL West, they're in 4th. If they're in the AL East, they are in 2nd, but they're like 9 games out of 1st. And not catching.
Yeah, not catching the Nationals.
If they're in the AL West, they're tied for 3rd, and they're 13 games out of 1st place. 13 games.
Ooh.
If they're in the AL Central, they're in 3rd place behind Minnesota and Cleveland.
The Twins have a better record than the Cubs right now.
Yeah. And they would be right almost neck and neck with Detroit. And if they're in the AL East, they're behind the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Orioles, and Tampa Bay.
They'd be behind Tampa Bay.
They would be behind Tampa Bay.
That's kind of upsetting.
They're actually behind. They're behind Tampa Bay by a game and a half.
Look, I mean, you look at the offensive stats as a whole, you look at where everything is going as a whole, and you look at the pattern of how they're playing games, this 5 on, 5 off, good week, bad week. Right now, the way they're playing this year, this is based on this year, not any other year, not on paper, not the roster. They are the stereotypical 500 team.
Yeah. I mean, the only saving grace here is, all right, they got one more against the Rockies. If they get swept in the 4-game series, that's bad. But they got one more against the Rockies. Then they get 3 against the Mets, who are really struggling. 3 against the Pirates, who are really struggling. 3 against San Diego, who they've got to get redemption there. And then they go to with the Marlins again, who they just beat. So they've got several series in a row that are all absolutely winnable series, and possibly, potentials for sweeps as well. And I know we talked about that last time they played the Padres, as we expected at least 2 out of 3, but probably a sweep, and they got swept. But
in embarrassing fashion.
So they get 3 Mets, 3 Pirates, 3 Padres, 3 Marlins, or 4 Marlins. Then they go 4 in Washington.
Yeah, that's not going to be easy, but overall, you got to take advantage of this. And a lot of people say, oh, they can't be bad teams, or they can't be good teams, they can't be good teams, they can't be good teams. I'm like, well, that may be the case so far, but with this season, the way you're going, take advantage of every bad team you can, and if you grind your way to the postseason, anything can happen in the postseason. So no matter what your opponent is, if it's bad, you got to take every win you could get.
Yeah, and they've got to start taking advantage of these series. You've got to win these. After the Nationals is you can, if you lose 3 out of 4, is it the worst thing in the world? No, as long as you are beating the Marlins and you're beating the Padres and you're beating the Mets and the Pirates, because then you follow it up by going to, Cincinnati and a 3-game series to beat up on the Reds. But you've got to win these series against the bad teams. You just have to. It's you think about the NFL is you have to win all of your home games, and if you can go 500 on the road, then you're competing for your division title. In baseball, you have to win the series against the bad teams, and then at least go 500 against a team like the Nationals or the Orioles.
Right, exactly. Now, if we looked at this Rocky series and we looked at this homestand as a whole, the sweep of the Cardinals was really big, and I thought that was the moment that we were taking off. I thought that was. And then they basically lost any ground they gained with these last 4 games. If the Rockies are really good this year, if we just split this series after taking 2 or 3 from the Marlins and sweeping the Cardinals, I'd be completely okay with that. But as it looks right now, I'm going to be honest, I think we're getting swept tomorrow by the Rockies. I think it's going to be a sweep.
Yeah, I honestly, I'd be shocked if the Cubs were able to win that game. Like I said, I just said a second ago, the only saving grace is the Central, and the National League Central is bad. Pittsburgh is really struggling. St. Louis is bottoming out. Cincinnati is a garbage team that I'm surprised that they're hovering around 500. And the team that's winning the division has a losing record at home in the middle of June.
Yeah, and also a lot of people are making the same point about the Brewers. Come trade deadline, they're still probably going to stick to their rebuild plan. I don't think they're going to suddenly take a turn and start buying instead of selling. I think they're going to stick to their rebuild plan unless they somehow get like a 10-game lead. But if it's like still fairly close or they fall into like second or third, I think they still stick with that rebuild plan.
I mean, if you're the GM of the Brewers, even if you've got a 10-game lead in the division, which I don't see, but even if you is this the year that you're like, well, I'm going to go all in and waste some of my future currency, when you've got a team like the Nationals in the East and you've got Colorado, Los Angeles, and Arizona out west? Those are teams that are powerhouse teams. Even if you've got a 10-game lead over a weak division, you gotta ask yourself, is this the year we go all in? And I don't know if that's the one.
Well, for the Cubs' sake, when I think about what they're going to do, I was thinking about this today because as the Cubs are getting killed, there were a lot of fans talking about what are they going to do, how are they going to do it, maybe they'll do this, maybe they'll do that. What I'm thinking is Theo is going to make moves that benefit today and tomorrow. So one of the main things is looking for a starting pitcher with control. It's not going to be like an all-in 1 year type thing where it's a rental. It's going to be something that's going to benefit us today and in the future. So I don't think we're going to see as much rent for this October. We're going to say we're going to buy up. We're going to gear up now and for the future. And if things don't work up this year, we'll still have these assets we got in these trades for years to come and maybe revamp a little bit.
And when you're the Cubs, that's a philosophy that you need to take because you've got a lot of young talent at the major league level. You have the ability to spend with almost any team in baseball, where you don't have that luxury in Milwaukee, and you have more trade chips to get the puzzle pieces that you're missing. So Cubs have a totally different situation, and they need to make moves because, how much of their rosters, their starting rotation is going to be there next year. Is from this year is you theoretically could flip 60% of your starting rotation for next year.
Well, yeah, the only ones that I really think are going to be back are Lester and Hendricks. I think everyone else is gone.
Yeah, is Anderson is your number 5, and who knows if he even comes back. He's got got another 30 days on the disabled list, and who knows if they even want him back. Is Eddie Butler although he hasn't been great, has been better than Anderson.
I still think they need to work with him a little more. I see potential, but there's more work to be done.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying that he's a finished product. I'm just saying is Anderson looked like hot garbage out there a lot of the time.
Right.
Arrieta starting to pitch better, and he's going to want big money, and the Cubs aren't going to give him they might be willing to give him the money, but they're not going to give him the years he wants. And Lackey, I would be shocked if he's back.
I'll be shocked if he's playing next year, period.
I could see him wanting one more run with somebody. Depends on how this year finishes up. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the rest of the year plays out.
Yeah, true.
If he finishes up strong and the Cubs make a run, I could see them bringing him back one more year. But I think if the Cubs just have a miserable year the rest of the year, I think he's just going to hang him up and say, I'm done.
I got my jewelry.
I didn't come here for a haircut.
I don't take no stinking stare downs.
I don't know how to quit you. Oh, wait, that wasn't him.
I eat children.
So the Cubs disappointing this week. Even some of the wins over the Marlins, they weren't exceptional wins. And then you get Hendricks on the disabled list. He's going to miss at least one start. Already missed one start. Going to miss probably another one.
Yeah, and Mike Montgomery was good in his place, but again, the offense didn't really do anything.
Yeah, Montgomery was okay. You've only got... I know batting average is not really a regarded stat per se, as far as the new way of thinking, but just for discussion's sake, is there's only one player on the Cubs batting over 260 of the regular starters,
and that's Bryant.
Yeah,
and he's at 265 now.
He's not hitting great as far as batting average.
Walking a lot still, but yeah.
Is all right. So I'm going to ask you.
Yes.
Of all of the Cubs in this season, who are you most disappointed by?
Kyle Schwarber. No question. I thought he was going to tear it up this year. Oh, you know what? That's performance-wise. I'm sure we'll touch on this in a bit.
We'll touch on this.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. And you know what? Is that player is actually the one I originally, like a knee-jerk reaction, said Kyle Schwarber. And I'm absolutely disappointed him because I expected the same thing as you. But I really expected Addison Russell to take a big step. And I thought he would have, based on spring training and some of the power you saw, I was like, I think you're going to see a bump in the batting average. Nothing, I figured probably around 260 he would bat, but with more power and still hit around 100 RBIs. And
Next, he had 90 last year.
Yeah, and so I was like, that's kind of what I expected, and he has really just taken 2 steps back. And, not even, we'll discuss a little bit about the off-field things, but on the field, I've been disappointed a lot. And there's a lot of choices on this team of who could be who disappoints you the most, but I think I go Addison Russell by a little bit, especially because he was an all-star last year.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Yeah, because like you said, the knee-jerk was Kyle Schwarber, but then I thought again, considering the circumstances, yeah, Addison Russell would probably be the one. If I were to do it from a pitching perspective, if you were to ask me just solely pitching, what has disappointed me the most? Because that's a tougher question. In terms of starting, I expected, even though he's old, I expected John Lackey to be a little better than this. And though I'm disappointed with Arrieta, we did see kind of a downward trend last year. As for the bullpen, I'd say Hector Rondon. He has not been good.
No, he hasn't been good. As far as starters, if you would ask me 2 weeks ago, I would have really leaned towards Arrieta. But we've seen a little bit of a bump up from him as far as his performance. Lackey, I guess my standards for him in the beginning were not as high. So he's sort of given me what I expected from him is, give up a couple bonehead home runs and then hold the line till late in the innings, and you're going to have to back him up with the bats. I've been really disappointed with John Lester.
Yeah, he has really not been consistent at all.
No, he's not been consistent. He's really had to struggle to get out of some innings. His last outing was really disappointing.
Oh, you're telling me? I was sitting in the bleachers watching that.
So he's supposed to be your ace, and the beauty of the Cubs last year is it was really hard to go on a losing streak because you had so many streak stoppers, so many guys that could just put you in a shutout, 7-inning shutout game and just give you the chance to win with just their awesomeness. And even if you just score one, you win a 1-0 game. This year, who's giving you that awesome performance if you really need it? I mean, guys have come up and performed, but who's the one you can count on?
There's no consistency, so you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you could have just an absolute gem. Was it 2 starts ago by Lester where you just throw just an absolute gem, and then you have a stinker against the Rockies?
Yep.
I guess Hendricks just hasn't been the same as he was last year.
I wanted to talk to you about him. When you're done with your point, I wanted to talk to you about him. I have an opinion on that I wanted to get your opinion on.
Yeah, so I mean, just really quickly, there's nobody that's consistent, and you can't ever anticipate if you need to lean on a pitcher for them to come through in the clutch.
Yeah, no, I definitely right on that.
So what was your point on Hendricks?
Okay, so watching Hendricks this year and watching him through his brief career, I think that what we're seeing from Kyle Hendricks, it's solid. It's not spectacular, but it's solid and good. I think that what we're seeing this year is closer to what we're going to see from him throughout his career as opposed to what we saw last year, because last year was just flat ridiculous. Would you agree or disagree?
Last year was just awesome, but I don't think this is what you're going to see for his career, but between the two, if you draw a halfway point, I think it's going to be towards the side of this season.
That's what right. That's what I'm saying. Not exactly this season, but closer to.
Yeah, I think the league is adjusting to him a little bit, and he's not had the command that he did last year, and I don't think he's getting some of the borderline calls that he did last year.
And defense behind him last year that was historic.
Last year he definitely, if you look at some of the sabermetric stats, is definitely was one of the guys that got a huge bump from the defensive behind him.
Exactly. Definitely. I mean, he was still really good. His command was good. His pinpoint was great. But even when stuff was put in play, it was almost sucked up like a vacuum by that Cubs defense.
Yeah. So I think a little bit is he'll get a bump from when the Cubs defense finally starts waking up and playing better. And I think once he readjusts to how hitters are hitting against him, and that's something that it's a constant. If you look at any good pitcher, is people will start to figure him out. He adjusts to how they're hitting him now, then they have to readjust, and it's a back and forth game that they have to play. And he's a smart guy. And he's got a good pitching coach. I think they'll figure it out and start to do a little better, but it's going to take work and it's going to take time, and he's got to come back from this injury.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you make an adjustment to them, they make an adjustment to you. You just got to make an adjustment back, and I think he's perfectly capable of that. He's got some great talent. He's really smart with how he throws. Good movement for not high velocity, very Maddox-like. But I'll never expect a 2.13 ERA from him again. I think in the future, in some of his best upcoming years, I think you'll see very low 3, maybe high 2, but 2.13 is very, very, very unlikely again.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I even said prior to the season starting, I was like, if he has a 2.9 ERA, I would be very happy.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, that's good, period, and especially for a guy like him, that'd be great. And again, I'm not trying to knock Hendricks in every way because I'm a huge fan of him, but I think you got to put in perspective of what he's capable of, the kind of guy he is, and considering what kind of team he had and how he played last year, it was above pretty much anything you're probably going to see. If we do see it again, that'd be great, but I wouldn't put money on it.
Yeah, absolutely. What else do we have with the Cubs? So like I said, is when they beat the Marlins, it wasn't the most convincing wins per se. Is the first game they won 3-1, but they had a start from Dan Straley, who's awful, and they got 3 runs off of him, off 2 home runs. So 100% of the runs they scored were off a home run. They didn't draw a single walk. And they won 3-1. I think the best part about that game was I thought Eddie Butler had a nice start.
Yeah, he did. He was getting a lot of efficient outs, and he was pulled with not a lot of pitches, and I was surprised he didn't keep going. But yeah, he had a very, very impressive start. Probably the most impressive that he's had yet.
Yeah, I think it was probably they're worried that the wheels would fall off, and they know the Cubs aren't scoring runs. So better to get to the bullpen and then send him out for another inning. The second win against the Marlins, it looked good on paper with the 10-2, but 6 of those runs were scored in the 7th. As you take away that one big inning, and it's not that big of a win. Arrieta had a nice game, 2-hitter, but his command was a little bit off with, he had 3 or 4 walks in that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last game of the series is 4 of the 5 Cubs runs were scored on the home run, and 3 of those were on Ian Happ home run. 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position, 9 guys left on base. You had a bunch of walks, and you just couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah, and the game-winning run was scored very, very stupid fashion. D. Gordon scored from second because no one covered home plate on a wild pitch. It was a strikeout that got away. And then no one was covering home plate, and D. Gordon scored. That was the stupidest run I've ever seen.
Oh, I was so furious when I watched it.
I know, me too.
Yeah, and then against the Rockies, they've just looked like hot garbage on all ends. You had the first game, Chatwood had over a 4.5 ERA before that game started, and the Cubs scored 1 run.
And that was a Bryant home run in the first inning, and it didn't land anywhere near me, but it was feeling good at that point, and then since then, nothing. They got some guys on base, and the result was the same every time, a weak grounder. Weak grounder, weak grounder, weak grounder.
Yep. Only drew 3 walks, and Lester gave up 4 runs, didn't look good. And yesterday's game was the epitome of bad, because I think you alluded to before, is they drew 9 walks, and in addition to that is those 9 walks, they had the bases juiced a couple of times and just poor hitting with runners in scoring position. And they saw over 180 pitches and only scored 3 runs. That's just like, I don't know how that's possible. I would love for one of those companies that Elias Sports Bureau or whatever, I don't know, whoever does the stats, to look up is how often, like, what's the record for the lowest number of runs scored when you've seen that many pitches.
And you know what else? That's not the first time they've done it this year. Remember against the Padres, they drew 9-10 walks, and they only scored 2 runs? It was almost a carbon copy of that game, because the runs that were driven in was a 2-run single by Hayward, and then that was it.
Yeah, they 1 for 11 in runners in scoring position, only 3 hits in the whole game.
And freaking Ben Zobrist swinging at the first pitch when Holland was walking guys left and right. He wasn't even close. And this brings me to a point I wanted to make about this Rockies series. All the Rockies pitchers are doing, they're pitching around Rizzo Bryant, because they know no one else is going to do anything. Yeah. I mean, think about it.
You know what? If the guy can't hit the strike zone to save his life, just stand up there and take pitches. Take pitches.
Especially Ben Zobrist, of all people, one of the guys who can put together a spectacular at-bat for you. What is he swinging at the first pitch for?
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And then they had their call-up Seth Frankoff, who didn't look so hot.
Well, to his credit, Baez made a stupid play of trying to barehand a ball that he should have thrown from the glove. He did give up the home run, but he really should have only given up 1 run. That's kind of a team effort right there, but what can you expect from a one-day call-up, honestly?
Yeah, no, you can't blame him, because this team had big problems before he even, got the call-up.
They still probably would have lost, so.
Yeah, it's just frustrating, because this team is playing really poorly. At first I was thinking, I was like, you know what, I keep saying this team is just struggling a little bit, but they'll go hot cold. Honestly, I'm starting to think that this team is just playing badly, and the only reason that they have a record near 500 is because they have so much talent. If this team didn't have that much talent, they would just be abysmal.
I mean, the one thing that I have to give them credit, they at least beat their own division. They may suck against everyone else. I mean, they suck against the West. They suck in interleague play so far, but they're beating their own division. That's keeping them afloat.
True. And I guess that's really all you need to do is beat your division, win your division.
Right. I don't know. It's just right now I don't know what to say, because like I said, right now they're playing like a stereotypical 500 team, and I really thought that Cardinals series and that Marlins series, I thought we were going to be taking off after that. When Schwarber hit that grand slam, I said we're going to look back on this like the 2007 Aramis Ramirez walk off, and then this happens. I mean, this season so far has been, we take a step forward, we take a step back. We take, we give right back.
The only thing I can hope is that 4-game series that's coming up in 2 weeks against the Nationals is the swing point, like it was 2 years ago when they had the 4-game series and swept the Giants. And that was the catalyst that just started everything for them going on to the playoffs. Hopefully that's the case this year. I know there's a lot of luck involved in that series against the Giants because they swept them, but there was a certain pitcher that they didn't, just out of sheer luck, didn't hit in that series.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the season down the stretch in 2015, that was some fantastic baseball the Cubs were playing, and it was probably the funnest stretch of Cubs baseball I ever watched in my life. And that's what I could hope for. And, this also brings this perspective of it. 2 years ago, this is the 2015 team. We're like, oh my God, we're a 500 team. This is thrilling. Now that they're the defending world champs, have all the expectations in the world and really don't have an excuse for it, it's aggravating and horrible to watch.
You're right. It's just a different frame of looking at things because of the expectations that we have after last year and the second half of the year before.
Right. So if they pull a 2015, late June going into July, then, we'll laugh this off. But right now, there's something that has to be done because there's a lot just not clicking right now.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing, we've alluded to several times, but finally touch on it, is this week, Addison Russell's wife posted something on Instagram about alluding to the fact that she's being cheated on and she's going to do things for her happiness rather than somebody else's. And an Instagram friend of hers straight out said that Addison Russell physically and mentally abuses her. And Major League Baseball went, ding, we're stepping in to investigate this. He was sent home from the team for one game, came back, and we really haven't had any updates since.
Yeah, my overall feeling is I'm really disappointed because this is a very serious issue. It's being investigated, and I think overall the Cubs have handled it well in terms of we are having this investigated, we are looking into this, we're not just brushing this off, we understand the seriousness of this. Maybe I think he was brought back a little too soon before anything kind of advanced, but at least they acknowledge the seriousness of this and are fully behind MLB and willing to work with MLB to investigate this, to get to the bottom of this. I think it's pretty obvious no matter what. Addison Russell's got some issues.
I mean, I had heard rumblings, and I didn't want to talk about them on the show just because they were personal of nature, and they were really unsubstantiated rumblings. But now that this comes to light, it adds up. I had heard plenty of rumblings that a lot of Addison Russell's poor play was because of distractions with a home life having to do with his marriage.
I heard
we already know that he's got 2 children and they're 3 months apart in age. So,
and they're with 2 different people.
Yeah, so there's that, and flat out his wife was accusing him of cheating again. So that much is, we have to assume that much is probably correct. But the other part about being abusive is it's a tough one to swallow.
That's very serious.
It's very serious, and I heard Jed Hoyer say that when he was asked what the Cubs are doing, and he said, "Listen, it's in the collective bargaining agreement. Is we interviewed Addison, we interviewed his wife, and after that, he's like, we have to step back because it clearly says this is a Major League Baseball investigation. He's like, if they need us to do anything, we will. But in the meantime, we are just trying to handle what's going on going forward. And I'm really curious because, they haven't cleared anything yet. And
No, they haven't.
And they started this investigation the night the tweet went out, or the Instagram post went out. So it's been several days. They've already interviewed everybody, and they have not said, all right, this was unsubstantiated and we're moving on. That's worrisome.
Yeah, I mean, there's no confirmation of it wasn't true. There's little to no information. I thought there'd maybe be something by now, whether it was for better or for worse, but there hasn't been, as some people are looking at from different perspectives. It's a really, really difficult situation. I can tell that his teammates are disappointed, and it's just something that you don't want your team to be part of at this moment. Because we're going to look back now at that championship team, and if you're thinking that there was somebody of this kind of character on that team, it kind of hurts you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really started hating the whole world because I normally have a don't read the comments policy on any article.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I started reading some of the comments under the Addison Russell thing, and just some of the awful things that were said, and from every angle.
Yeah.
I mean, things like, well, she's too hot to hit. So somebody should get hit because they're not hot.
That makes no sense.
I would be getting hit all the time. Or he couldn't do it because nobody on the Cubs would do that. Or he signed a baseball for my kids. He's a good guy. He wouldn't do that. He should be thrown in jail. There's it just from every angle, and I'm like, if I'm of the mindset, if she would have come out and said it, I would have to take her word on it, and until proven otherwise. But because it was a third person, then it kind of makes you go, I don't know. I'm just gonna wait. That's when I sit back and I go, I'm gonna wait for everything to come out. But it's a really disappointing situation that he clearly got himself into. Whether or not it did happen, is he got himself into the situation where he's angered people enough to say that even if it's not true.
Yeah, and also what's come out during all this, I've heard numerous fans say some not so good things about him, like how he's been a jerk to people, like just regular fans, and how he's treated the fans poorly. It's, and I don't think people are making this up, and I've heard multiple people say the same exact things. He says bad things to fans. He's flipped off some people that he's just not been very kind to them like other people have, like Bryant or Javi or Rizzo or Contreras, because we've heard how good they are with the fans. But with Addison Russell, I've heard some not so good things about him, the way he's interacted with fans. So it sounds like more and more of his character is coming out, and whether the most seriousness of this is confirmed or not, I think it's pretty clear that he has some personal issues, and he is not who you think he is.
Yeah, I agree. Is whether or not the situation is true, and for all parties involved, you hope it's not. And this is not I'm a Cubs fan talking, is, you don't want to see a situation where like a woman, especially one with two young kids, is being abused. You never want anyone to be abused, and you feel so bad for the innocent young kids who have no control over it. Yeah, so you hope for everybody, for the kids' sake, for the his wife's sake, that you just hope that this is not true and it was somebody just spouting off. But you have to face the reality that this very well could happen. And even if it didn't, like you said, didn't happen, is he's done some things that a man of more made of moral fiber, higher moral fiber than him, probably wouldn't have gotten himself in a situation. And I just want to, so I think I've said this before, but I have a friend who lives outside of New Orleans, and whenever the Iowa Cubs come to town, because they have a AAA team there, he emails me and says, hey, who are the Cubs players that I should try to get autographs from? Because he'll take his kids, go to the game. And a couple years ago, I was like, Chris Bryant, absolutely, positively. And they played a back-to-back. They played a night game and then a Wednesday day game. And he went to both. And Chris Bryant signed several things for his kids on the night game. And the day game was it was a game that looked like it was going to get postponed because it was raining heavily. It was raining heavily earlier, and they got the game off on time. But it was a rainy midweek game with a minor league team, so there was not that many people there. But he took his kids, went to the game, and he said Chris Bryant sat there and signed like 20 things for his kids. And he took pictures, and they said he was as nice could be. Mm-hmm. And he sent me a ball. So I've got a Chris Bryant autograph ball from that game. He said Contreras was nice. He said Bryant was just absolutely beyond nice.
And that's all I've heard about him is wonderful things.
He said Ian Happ was not very nice. But it just, when, like, it's great to have a guy like Chris Bryant who is, when put in the situation, he's got a good sense of humor. He's great with the media. He's great with the fans. He's absolute phenomenal baseball player. And to have a guy like that to build around your team, you would hope that it would start rubbing off on everybody.
Yeah, you would think, but unfortunately it doesn't always work that way. Somebody was talking on the radio, sharing stories about how somebody worked for one of the minor league teams, and the team seemed talented and cool and whatever playing, but when you got to know them in the clubhouse and interact with them, that they were jerks and kind of nasty and just not who you would think. So I think the overall lesson here is you can't always just idolize athletes because they're good and they're on your team. Sometimes you just got to treat them as, like somebody said on Twitter, just as video game characters. You watch them play, you watch them do things, but you don't really look to them for moral support or for always a role model, unless, there's some exceptions with some people, but you can't really do that. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. And talking about this subject is really difficult because you never want to sound like you're absolutely not taking a side, like you're disregarding one of the sides in this situation, because that's not what I'm trying to do. It's just the situation as a whole is just not good.
No, like I said, is regardless of where the truth lies, it's not a good situation. I know that sometimes there's been cases where people have been accused of things they didn't do, but that doesn't happen with the guys with high moral character. Guys that are stellar guys, like in the NFL, Warwick Dunn, who won the Man of the Year award several times and just been just a phenomenal person. Guys like that
or like Peanut Tillman.
Peanut Tillman. You don't see these accusations come out about them. You don't see them. But guys that put themselves in questionable situations, these things come about. because they're putting themselves in these types of situations and surrounding themselves with certain types of people and creating the atmosphere. So I just hope this isn't true for everybody's sake, but I face the reality that where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yep. And like I said, it's obvious, no matter what, that Addison Russell isn't, man of the year by any means. But it could go from being a jerk to someone who's domestically abusive, which is much, much worse than just being a jerk.
Yeah, because there's plenty of people that are absolute just jerks in real, to the media and to people in public, but with their family and the people that they love are nice people. Being a jerk doesn't mean you're a criminal, but most of the time when people are jerks, that spills over into more serious things.
Right, exactly. And, overall, just very disappointed in the situation, and that's all I can really say.
Yeah. So I guess we can wrap this up with White Sox. Not too much to say. This team is just finally hitting their stride of sinking to the bottom. They lost 2 of 3 to Tampa Bay. They got steamrolled by Cleveland and a dominant performance by Corey Kluber. And now you're without Jose Abreu because he got beamed in the leg by a nasty Andrew Miller pitch.
He did play today.
Did he?
Yes, he did. He had 3 hits.
Oh, wow.
It looked bad last night. I saw the replay.
Yeah, it looked really bad. And I was like, especially with Andrew Miller pitching, I'm like, that can't bode well. Maybe he just needs to get hit more if he's going to hit like that. This team is really starting to become the team that I think everybody expected them to be at the beginning of the season. But the worst news, I think, is I don't think them losing games is a bad thing. I think it's probably in the long run a good thing.
No, it's what they need.
But the bad part is one of your guys that you were looking to flip is Derek Holland, and he had another awful start on Thursday.
Yeah, that's 3 bad starts in a row, 3 subpar starts.
Yep. Gave up 3 home runs in 4 2/3 inning. When you look, you're scouting an American League pitcher, you kind of expect them to go a little deeper in the games just because of you don't have to do double switches, you don't have to worry about him batting and things like that. So usually they can go a little longer, but he hasn't had long outings. He's been giving up home runs. He's been the strikeout to walk ratio hasn't been great. Lots of hits. I would be shocked to see somebody trade for him now. And if they do, they're not giving up anything for him.
Yeah, I mean, there really was no risk in signing him anyway. And if you get anything, you'll take it. So it's really not like a huge, devastating part of the rebuild if it doesn't get a great return. So, it's just kind of there, I guess.
Yeah, it was one of those things is that it was, at this point, if you would have taken the snapshot or, told somebody at the beginning of the season when they signed him that showed him his season stats up to this point, you'd be like, okay, whatever, no risk, no, no harm, no foul. You paid him chump change money as far as Major League Baseball pitchers, and you didn't work out. Okay. But I think the disappointment comes is up until a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, he looked like somebody that you could absolutely flip and get something for, and it's just absolutely unhinged and derailed. And that's where I think that's where the disappointment is because you saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, oh wow, we can flip this guy now. The plan that we had, the hope we had when we signed him, is coming true, and then the reality comes and hits you in the face.
Yep. Yep, and that's it kind of makes you think what could have been, but doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, same thing with Mike Pelfrey. Is you got a couple of good starts in a row out of him, and you're like, all right, well, there's another guy we could flip, and then he gets, he didn't have a great outing against Tampa, and Tampa's an all right team, but it's you shouldn't be. It's not like you're playing the Rockies or the Nationals or the Orioles or something. They're an all right club. You shouldn't have these awful outings against them.
Right. It's kind of weird seeing the matchups because some bad teams against them have looked good, and they've looked good against some good teams. So there've been kind of some weird splits right there. Yeah,
and you've sort of settled into they've displaced the Kansas City Royals as dead last in the AL Central, and you sort of have to figure that they're going to sit there for the rest of the year.
Right.
You kind of expect that division to start the separation. I don't know how Minnesota is staying up there. I think they've got a little voodoo magic.
Yeah, because their statistics really aren't that great.
No. They're 12-18 at home. How is a team in first place with a pretty good record 12-18 at home?
Yeah, you got that. You don't have really consistency anywhere on the board. They're just kind of finding ways to win here or there. More on the road than at home, obviously. But that's not going to last. It's like right now, you see the parity, but there's not always going to be parity. Where other divisions, you say there's going to be parity throughout. The AL Central is not like that.
Yeah, you really expect. In another couple weeks, definitely by the trade deadline, is Cleveland establishing dominance, Detroit hanging in there but not going to make any splash as far as making the playoffs, and Minnesota, probably starting to fall down, and Kansas City and the White Sox coming up the rear.
Yeah,
I don't see much difference in much way that could change. But what do the White Sox have coming up as far as their games? White Sox schedule.
Pretty sure they have one more with the Indians tomorrow, but then I think they come back home because the Cubs go on the road, so just a matter of who.
You're right. They've got a 4-game homestand against Baltimore.
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I might try to go to one of those games. The Orioles are kind of like my American League team.
I like the Orioles. I like the Orioles a lot.
When I was a little kid, Cal Ripken was my favorite player. I don't know why, just was my favorite player.
I think he was a lot of favorite players.
And as far as the National League, for the Cubs, it was Ryan Sandberg, Andre Dawson, and Mark Grace. Because Cal Ripken was my favorite player, I always had a soft spot for the Orioles. But then after that, they go 3 in Toronto, 3 in the Twins, and then come back home against the Athletics. So the Twins, Blue Jays, Orioles, and Indians is not a good stretch for a team that's really struggling.
No, but, like I said, if you lose a lot of those, gets you a good draft pick, so... I keep saying this over and over. This year for the White Sox, I think it's in their best interest to suck as much as you can, with, of course, some key tradable assets performing well. The most ideal scenario is guys like Quintana and Robertson and like Todd Frazier, Melky Cabrera play good, but the team as a whole is complete dog crap, so they can trade for young assets and draft more top young assets.
That's the plan, but there's a lot of teams that are just sucking terribly.
Right.
Oakland is bad. Toronto doesn't have a good record, but they can hit the lights out of a baseball.
They're much improved compared to where they were a few months ago.
And it was funny. Remember a couple weeks ago, Philadelphia was like right up at the top of right up at the top of the second tier of the AL East, and I was like, oh, this team is bad, and they're gonna sink. They're now, I believe they have the worst record in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, they do this every year. They start off competitive, and then they just take a nosedive.
Yeah. Pittsburgh's right there at the bottom. San Diego's right there at the bottom. So the White Sox got some competition there for top draft picks.
Yeah, they do. And, we talk about Seth Beer, and he's probably going 1 or 2 overall. So there's going to be some competitive to not be competitive as usual, but especially with a guy with so much talent like him.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens in the Major League Baseball draft. Next show we have the draft will have occurred, and we'll be able to talk about the White Sox top 11th pick and 2 first rounders for the Cubs.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I'm really curious if a lot of people seem to think that they've got the beat on who the Cubs will draft, and for a team drafting that late in the first round is, usually in that late you don't see somebody have that much of a beat on somebody as you do like earlier picks, but a lot of people seem to think that they know who the Cubs are picking.
Yeah, there was a lot of link to this one shortstop. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, the one out of San Diego.
Yeah, him. I thought that was kind of interesting, but there's a lot of talks that they'll go others, but most of the talks I've heard were linked to that one guy, so I guess we'll see. Yeah,
we shall see. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to cover, Alex.
No, I think we did pretty good today.
All right, well, I guess that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please make sure you subscribe on however you listen to podcasts, whether that's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. Follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Share with your friends. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears! Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.